Do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. You know, Ronald Reagan, when it was early, like Governor Reagan, he said at his inaugural address, "Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation, for it comes only once to a people. And those in world history who have known freedom and then lost it have never known it again." That's an interesting thing. I know a lot of people these days are thinking freedom is under assault. I would agree. In a lot of ways it is. And so, you know, what do we do to fight for it, to keep it? What do we do to hand it on to younger generations? As a dad of four, that's, you know, something that I consider. And so I'm encouraged by today's guest. His name is Brilyn Hollyhand, and he's 18, and he's got a book that just came out. It's called One Generation Away, and he's taking the bull by the horns. And it's exciting to see. I'm proud of him. So you're going to hear from him today. And I think this, if you're like me, concerned, what kind of world are my grandkids going to grow up in, you know, especially for us here at Life Outreach, is religious freedom going to be protected the way it was, you know, has been in my life? Well, you're going to be encouraged because Brilyn is fighting the good fight. And so you'll hear from him. Brilyn, great to have you on the program. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This is exciting, and I'm so excited to get to talk about all this. It's an honor.
I'm really curious, like, you know, because you are young, but you're accomplishing some great things, and again, that's exciting to see. But I'm curious where this came from. Most 18-year-olds are thinking about completely different things. Why a book about fighting for the freedom of our country?
Yeah, it actually started 7 years ago. I first got interested in politics at the age of 11. So as 18 sounds crazy, but 11, I don't know how that came about. But really, it was just, you know, people look at it and like, oh, you must have grown up in a political family. Your parents must have been, you know, fundraising people. You were just drugged to all these political events. And not at all. My mom was a school teacher and dad's in construction. So about as far away from politics as you can get, just the everyday Americans living like a Christian conservative life. And I was fortunate enough to be raised around those morals and values, but definitely wasn't drugged into politics. I actually drugged them with me when I came into politics. So that's kind of where we are. I mean, I know you mentioned, you know, the grandparents and parents out there. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I you know, this book's for them. This book, One Generation Away, is really out there for the grandparents who look out at America and just don't recognize it. Like my grandparents. I was talking to my grandmother yesterday on the back porch, and she was like, I don't know what world you're going to grow up in. I don't recognize this country as the same one I grew up in. I was like, you're right, Granny. It's unfortunate. But the book's also for parents. Parents out there who are fed up with this indoctrination we're seeing, that are fed up with what's going on in the schools and want to start instilling Christian conservative morals and values in the living room before the activists and education can start attacking it. And it's not just for my peers, you know, fellow Gen Z out there who really want to push back against this, like you mentioned at the top, who want to restore American freedom, who want to, you know, kind of live by this quote that Reagan told us that, you know, not to be a fearmonger, but freedom could be on the brink of extinction. Mm-hmm. We want to push back against that. We don't want to grow up in a socialist, communist country, but there's not a lot of, you know, push from our generation to save it. And so that's really what this is. My whole journey and you know, culminating with this book has been get up off the sidelines, Christians, conservatives out there. This is the time to save the country, or like you said, there's not going to be a country left for us to live in.
Yeah, you know, Reagan was also famous for saying, you know, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Yes.
I was actually in East Germany when the wall was coming down. I have pieces of it at my house that I chipped off of both, because it was actually two walls, east and west, and we were on both sides of it, and I got to take the hammer to it. And, you know, it was the young people that were pushing heavily to topple communism and to stand for freedom. Yes, there was some leadership from the older generations, but it seems like if it doesn't take root in the youth, it's not going to happen. I'm curious, where did you grow up in a public school or private school? What was your education?
So I grew up in the public school, and then around fourth or fifth grade, I moved to a private school.
Okay.
So I'm in a private school now. I start my senior year of high school tomorrow is the first day.
That's great. Okay, so let's talk about the book, One Generation Away. What are the issues that you are looking at from your perspective?
Yeah, so the first thing out there is just what you mentioned, trying to talk to my peers who really have all these big ideas and this energy, and I think they're shifting it in the wrong direction. We saw in the past few months with kind of the protests that are going on college campuses. My generation's always looking for a cause, something to champion, something really to come and support. And it's not always something geared in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I remember, and it's a story I share in the book because it hit me so personally. We all remember the summer of 2020 and how much was going on that summer. I remember sitting in my Sunday school class and there was a TV screen like showing a replay of the night before of the cities being rioted and looted and burnt down and just kind of what was going on in the country. And I remember just kind of saying out loud to no one in particular, what in the world's happening to America? And my Sunday school teacher leaned across and I put the direct quote in the book because I just thought it was so fascinating. I'd never thought about it like that. He said, these are lost people. These are people out there that do not know the love, the grace, and the mercy of Jesus and do not know, that there is a better option. And so the point of the book is really what's going on in the country, that my generation is trying to fill this void and we're filling it with the wrong things. And to the point of the book is fill the void with God and save America. We're a Christian nation founded on the bedrock of Christianity. And right now, the left is attacking that, and that's why the country's crumbling. They knew that when they did that, this would be the result. And we have to push back against that. And I think, like you said, it starts with young patriots standing up and speaking out. And you know this, the founding fathers were all young patriots. It's not like some crazy, outlandish idea for young people wanting to get involved today.
Yeah. Okay, so it's interesting that you know what you just said, because as we're a Christian organization, television, we do a lot of overseas humanitarian work, and my dad, he stood on the stage with Reagan when he was running back in 1979, I guess, and really helped rally the Christians around Reagan, who was not thought of as a spiritual leader because, he was an actor. He was a California Hollywood guy, right? Yeah. But we've had this constant, my whole life, this constant thing of, okay, is it rallying behind, the right candidate for president or governor or things like that? And I think that's obviously important because they're the ones making the decisions that impact us all. We've seen the difference between the years of Trump. And people said he's my president, not my pastor, because the guy's not necessarily a spiritual giant, but he's pointed in the right direction. And then we get Biden, who goes to mass and things like that, but he's pointed in the wrong direction. And when you look at the policies, you get past the personalities. I always want to make it about personality. It drives me nuts. You look at the policies. What is pushing us in a better direction? And they're running in pretty opposite directions these days. It's so the tension, amongst a Christian ministry like ours is: do we address the political and push for the political, or do we focus on evangelism? And I don't think it's an either or, but I don't know. We might get the right guy in for 4 years or 8 years or whatever, or woman. But if there's not that biblical foundation in the people, it's never going to last. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you see it's about getting the gospel into people's lives, ultimately, but yet at the same time fighting this fight that you're fighting. How do you balance those two things?
Well, you're spot on, and I'm so glad you mentioned that this isn't an either or thing. This is something you have to do jointly, but also you you hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, yes, we attempted in the past to rally behind these figureheads and these politicians, and that's great if they support Christian conservative policies. But at the end of the day, they're in there for 4, if we're lucky, 8 years, and that's that, and we do the cycle all over again. What we really need in the nation is a revival of these morals and values amongst the people.
Yeah.
And then, we'll have good, strong, conservative Christian men and women run and be elected from that. That's awesome. That's what we want in the end. But if we don't actually start a revival within the people, we're never going to have anything other than a 48 years and then a switch over and then a bad 48 years and another switch over. It's just going to be this constant cycle. And so you're absolutely right. We have to put policies over personalities when we're thinking about leaders, especially in this election. And I was talking to somebody literally just yesterday, a college student that came up. I was doing a book signing, and this guy came up and he was like, I'm voting for the first time just like you. And I'm a Christian. I can't vote for Trump. Like, I disagree with the things he's saying. And I said, listen, and one of the things he specifically said is the same thing we always hear. The mean tweets were so bad.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, just this morning, the stock market crashed and Iran is attacking Israel. We're on the brink of World War III and we're on the brink of an economic collapse. I will take mean tweets every single day of the week over that. Right. I will take those 2 or 3 a.m. Remember the tweets in the middle of the night that woke everybody up with Trump making news and it just causing this whole storm the next day? I will take that every single day over the position we're in right now. And he was like, well, like, I guess you're right. And I was like, it's an either or thing. You get the mean tweets in a good country, or you get the bad policies and falling into a world war is what we're seeing. And it kind of clicked. And so I think that's what we have to tell people. But again, you're spot on. It's not just the pundits, the personalities, the candidates. It's actually the populists and where we go with that.
Yeah, and we've got to get the policy situation, man. I mean, okay, so we'll play a little bit of. Obviously, you're watching what's going on. I mean,
just a little bit.
There's one of these reality shows. I don't watch them, but there's one where they're like sequestered on an island, and they were sequestered during the time where Trump was shot, and then Biden dropped out after saying, I'm never dropping out. And you got to figure they came off the island and went, what just happened?
What
Things
happened?
can happen, right? Kind of funny. But
it was like a 2 to 3 days there where every single thing turned upside down.
It was. I know. It's crazy. So what do you think when you see the situation when, in the, not just the Biden-Harris thing, but I mean, the assassination attempt? I mean, we were this close to I don't know what. It's a little intense, and I've lived through some pretty intense times, but I've never seen anything this crazy. What's it look like from your end?
It's crazy. That's a good word for it. I said at the beginning, I got started at the age of 11 in the 4th grade with the 2016 election because I was like, this is insane. Like, this is so divisive and so crazy. This has got to be as crazy as it gets. And then every 4 to 8 years, it gets somehow even crazier. Yeah. Don't understand how, but it's the country we live in. And that's just kind of where we are. And so I remember the assassination attempt. I was here at home, like one of the rare days I'm ever home, and was packing a bag to leave at like 4 a.m. the next morning to fly to Milwaukee to go to the convention with President Trump. And we're getting ready, and I had the TV on mute, and it was up there, obviously on the news. And I look up, and the motorcade's speeding away. And I was like, well, that's odd. That's not normal. Like, I've been to a few dozen rallies. I've never seen a motorcade speed away. And I was like, it couldn't have been anything, right? Like, there's no way. And immediately my phone starts ringing. And so got, brought into all of that. We left even earlier from Milwaukee the next day to be at the convention, dealt with that whole week, the same week that J.D. Vance was announced as vice president, the same week Biden dropped out, the same week Kamala was the nominee, like all of that within a 7 to 8 day period. And you're just looking at it like, what is going on? And so I think I realized something very simple that week, and I wrote it in my journal, and I've mentioned it a few times in the book. I think we realized that week how crazy politics can get, how crazy the country is, how we live in a broken nation, in a broken world, and also why you can't put your faith and trust in life in politics. You have to put your faith, trust in life in God alone. Yeah. And so what I constantly tell people, we mentioned at the beginning about the Reagan quote, I'm constantly told by young people, almost every single time I give a campus speech, oh, America is not worth saving. I have no hope in America. I have no hope in the future. And I immediately said, no. Explain why. And then I'll come back with something. And they said, well, the politicians are so bad. Both sides of the aisle, they're all corrupt. They're all broken. And I said, well, there's the problem. You cannot put your faith in DC bureaucrats. You have to put your faith in Jesus Christ alone. And you see it kind of click when I say that, like, oh, you're right. It's again the same thing of policies over personality, but also, Christ over everything. And this isn't something that we should just be like, oh, we immediately think that whoever whatever party, we can say Republican Party for this example, or the Republican Party puts up is the next person that's going to save this country, and this is the person we all need to follow. Yeah, we need to support the party, we need to support the policies, but we can't be putting our faith in that. And so you realize in a week like that, when you get high anxiety from the constant news cycle, refreshing every 30 seconds with some groundbreaking story, that's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, it is. All right. This is BrilynHollyhand.com. You can get a signed copy of the book if you want to get one. I'm curious, do you find that young people listen to you better than they do some of the older people because you are of their generation?
Yes, you're right. It's a lot easier to go on a campus or a young event. People as a fellow young person of saying like, yeah, I'm a senior in high school too. I'm a first time voter. Like I understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
It comes across better, and it's a lot better than somebody flying down from DC talking down to young people. Right. And we've seen that, perform pretty well. We've seen it perform well with the book. But it's just an easier conversation. Like I can relate. I'm going into that phase of life where in the next few months I will be financially independent. I'll be graduating from high school, moving to college, renting my first apartment, going into that phase of life where young people are, and realizing like, oh, Bidenomics isn't good. It's hard for parents or grandparents. It's even harder for young people.
It's killing my kids right now. I mean, it's just it breaks my heart because I'm like, man, interest rates and housing costs and things like that. And it's like, it's almost not fair to them. And I'm like,
it's not.
I'm like, hang on. Hopefully things will be changing here soon. So you've been around Trump though quite a bit. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So my dad tells me I had one chance to go meet President Trump, but I had to fly to DC, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not flying to DC. So, but he tells me that personally, he's like the most gracious, nice, attentive guy. It's not always the persona that we see in the news bites. What have you experienced? What's he like?
He absolutely is. Your dad's spot on, because that's what I've seen, like in my own personal relationship with him. The most recent conversation I had with him, you're gonna love this. We were backstage at a rally. He came to my home state, and we're talking, and I had just said, like, he has a little curtain around him when they're backstage, kind of like a Secret Service barrier, and they just opened it, and I walked in, and immediately he started waving his hands in the air, the typical Trump fashion, and he goes, "Brilyn, what can we do to win the youth vote?" And I kind of froze for a moment. And I was like, this is the man with the top advisors, the top campaign experts in the world around him, like standing in the same bubble. Yeah. And he's asking me, like an 18-year-old, how to win? Like what? But it's because he genuinely cares. Like Kamala Harris will get out there and say she cares about young people, and she'll bribe our votes with, student loan forgiveness and trying to do, TikTok trends, and that's it. She's not asking us what we need. And so his genuine thing was like, what, you're voting for the first time? And I was like, yes, sir. And he was like, okay, like, what do you care about? Like, what's a big thing for you right now? We talked about the economy. We talked about how it's unfortunate that you don't feel safe in your own country. We went through the whole aspect, like, I'm afraid there won't be an America left. Like, we got to save it now. And we talked about all this. And he was like, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. Like, I need to be knowing what young people care about and, like, how we can do that. And he's like, okay, for this, we can pass this executive order. We can send this through Congress. We can do this. I can go visit this. We can check on this. Like, he's actually caring about young people and caring about what he can do to win. Not just to have the vote, but to actually talk. And that's what's so unique. Like you're right, he's personable. And you don't expect that because the media paints this portrayal of him that he's this big egotistical guy that won't listen to anybody. And that's just not true. He is listening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so fascinating to have the ear of somebody like that. It's like a pinch yourself moment of how in the world am I in this situation, in this curtain? Right. But it's by the grace of God.
Yeah. And you are basically representing your generation to him, which is wild when you think about it. I mean,
it really is,
and really cool. And the fact that this is the first time you can actually vote.
Yeah. It's really crazy.
I don't need to ask who you're voting for.
I told him so.
Okay,
yes. Yeah. He asked, and I was like, "Sir, you have nothing to worry about. I will tell you now. You have at least one vote." And he was like, "That's good. That's good."
That's hilarious. And the thing is, and I mean, I know you know this, but you haven't lived it like us old people. This is the first time you've had a politician who doesn't need politics. I mean, he doesn't.
Really.
He's successful on his own. I do think there's a little bit of, that New York competitiveness where he did lose in 2020. We can argue about that, but regardless, he was out of the White House. I do think he wants to go out on top. I think that's there. But I also know that he wants to leave the country in a better place, and he wants to do what you want to do, which is, maintain the freedom we have, restore the freedom we've lost, and really, anchor this country. Because, dude, I've been all over the world. I don't know how much you've traveled at your young age, but this is still the best place on earth, even with all the problems. Some of these other countries, man, it's a hard life, and we just don't need to waste it. So, thank you for doing what you're doing. Absolutely. Please keep doing it. I'm curious, being at the RNC at the convention, is there? Do you think? It seems like there's excitement, that there's more unity than I've seen in a lot of years.
Absolutely.
Do you feel good about the election this year?
I do. I'll say I literally, the moment before I was on this, I was on a campaign call, and the comment I made to the team was, listen, we can't get cocky, we can't get complacent, we can't act like we have this thing in the bag, because we don't. Like, I feel confident, but this isn't something that you can just say, oh, we're done, we're going to go sit and play golf for the next 3 or 4 months, and whatever happens, election day happens because we're going to win. And that's not the way to go about it. You have to run this thing like you're 20 points behind, and really go after every single voter. Like, this is the time to go into overdrive as, the DNC's crumbling. And so that's kind of the atmosphere that we need to have. But I think you're spot on. There's unity. And that's what I saw. I was standing, I'll never forget this. I was standing on the floor of the convention that Monday night when Trump surprised everybody and walked in. This is 36 hours after being shot in the head. Walks in, sits down, and you're like, what just happened? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that was, it was a powerful moment. And it really showed, you have people in that room, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, all in the same room with Donald Trump that night. And you see these people, supporters in the room, delegates in the room, that voted for other candidates in the primary, that very vocally supported the candidates in the primary. We had a messy primary, and it all came together that night of this is our goal, this is our mission. It's not about him, it's about the party, and it's about all of us coming together. And I think that that's been our mission, since the primary ended, but it was really solidified with that convention, that this is where we are going forward, that this is what we're supporting, and it's something bigger than us. It's not just getting Republicans on top anymore. It's not just getting Donald Trump in the White House. It's about getting the country saved before it's too late. And I think we're all on the same mission for that. So you're exactly right about unity.
Yeah, and honestly, we have to be, because there's some things going on, and I could go down a list of issues, and the bottom line is the Republicans aren't, as Dan Bongino says, the Republicans aren't the solution to all the problems, but just the Democrats are the source of all the problems right now, and I voted for Democrats young in my life because they were pro-life and fiscally conservative, socially conscious. I am too. But there's none left. I mean, it is the difference between the two parties is so stark right now. I look at my friends who are Christians who don't like Trump because of because he's rough, and I go, you got to vote on the policy. You can't. Yeah. I know the personalities are never going to be everything that you want, or they could be. That'd be nice, but right now they're not. So we've got to vote on the policies. From your perspective, and again, sorry, forgive me for stressing almost the generational differences, but I mean, again, as a dad, and I got a bunch of 20-somethings, and and sometimes when I talk to them, it's like it doesn't click, and that can be hard for a dad. He's like, kids grow up, they become their own men, and it's like, stop that, listen to me. But what resonates with your generation? What gets their attention to wake them up to the reality that you're discussing in your book, that you're out there stumping for, the values and the truths? What are some of the things that maybe someone like myself could say to my Gen Z kids that would move them in the right direction?
I think the big thing that I've seen a lot of the past 2 to 3 years doing campus tours is that young people learning from our parents and grandparents that it doesn't have to be this way, that it wasn't always like this. And that's really the big thing of we've only grown up in this country this going this direction. Like I really like my pivotal years of middle school, we were kind of learning so much was during COVID. So I've only seen a country controlled by big government. And when you're told by your parents and grandparents that there was a better nation one day, that it doesn't have to be like this, so controlled, that you're like, oh, I want that back. You have that desire, this human desire to want to be free and want to have a country where you can feel safe, that you can actually, go on a road trip every now and then and not have to get a second mortgage on your house. I mean, these are really things that are affecting people, and most young people can't even buy a house right now. So it's very simple to talk to people right now and just simply say, hey, listen, there is another alternative. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. I didn't grow up in a country like this. It wasn't always like this. And I think we live in a spot in the country right now, like in this timeline in history, where we're very open to understand in a different way. Where, historically, a Republican presidential candidate hasn't won the youth vote since 2003. And so it's not, like we do really well with the youth previously, but I think this time people are like, why do you feel so good about the youth? And it's because we were seeing it firsthand. We're seeing how bad, I mean, people talk about the economy. Yeah, the economy is big. It's not just the economy, but how bad the country is right now. And so you're exactly right. It's for parents and grandparents out there to talk to us about it, and that's how we'll listen the most.
Yeah, and I do think it's important that we acknowledge. Yeah, actually, some things are better. We say returning to the good old days. There are some bad, negative things in our culture that we have moved beyond, and that's a good thing. And I just think we need to maintain the positives and continue to eliminate some of the negative kind of things. We can make America great again, but it's up to us, and it's up to all of us, every generation out there. All right, last word to you, Brilyn. One generation away. It's not going to be your generation, is it?
I don't think so. We're gonna do everything we can to prevent that. And again, like I said at the beginning, not to be a fearmonger, but we are going to do our best to step up and save it. And again, this is Christian conservatives out there of all generations. For too long, we've heard people say, I'm scared to speak out. I'm scared to do this. I'm scared to actually, stand up and do something. I'll do it the next cycle. There's not going to be a future in the country if we don't do it right now. And so this is the time to do it. You're exactly right. We're going to save America one generation at a time, and that starts right now.
Yep. And it starts, it starts by having the conversations, frankly.
Yes.
And it starts by openly sharing the gospel. Because that's the long term. And in the short term, we got to get out and vote. Take 10 people with you. And don't just vote for the top of the ticket. Vote down ticket. Get the people in local. Yeah, there you go. You know that. That's how we're going to do it. Thank you, Brilyn. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. A lot of fun.
Thank you guys for watching. Hit that share button. If you haven't liked, follow, subscribe, do that. You'll get notifications of more good and great interviews like today's. And you can pick up One Generation Away wherever you get books. We'll see you next time here on Life Today Live.